Hi there, I'm BenDeLaCreme, and today Pop Buzz has asked me to paint a self-portrait. It's been a minute since I've done this. You know, I actually went to school for painting, but I haven't done it in so long. And it turns out that when you don't practice something, you get bad at it. Who would have imagined? So we'll see how this goes. This is a photo that I took when I was losing my mind in quarantine. So this smile of desperation truly symbolizes sort of me at my epitome of despair. If I'm thinking back to my first show, you know, some people might ask, what was your first show as BenDeLaCreme? But actually, I didn't take on the moniker BenDeLaCreme until I moved to Seattle, which was around 2007. But I used to perform in Chicago under the name Tina Angst, and I was a punk rock riot girl, and I was furious about everything. And my first performance in a nightclub was to the La Tigre song Decepticon, and I was competing in a competition that back in the early 2000s was called Drag Race, wouldn't you know it? Long before, you know, RuPaul came out of her blue jeans and cowboy hats and flat wigs phase at that time that she was going through. And I won my very first drag competition, and that gave me all the delusions of grandeur that I live with today. Sharing a tour bus with a bunch of drag queens is really an experience that has to be experienced, I guess. An experience you have to experience, as most experiences are, I suppose. The last tour I was on, I have to say Lady Bunny was on that tour. It was a roast tour, so that was surreal to be sharing the bus with her, especially because long after everyone has either gone to bed or left the bus or whatever, Lady Bunny is just sitting around in the front benches talking politics. She is one of the most intensely political queens I have ever met in my life. Those that are older than us are sometimes wiser, sometimes crazier, sometimes both. Lady Bunny is the third of those options. I am really getting hung up on that. It is like I'm so into talking that all I've been doing is squishing around flesh tones for a solid, I don't know, what's it been, 3 hours? Let's see. If there were a planet run by drag queens, first of all, I would be out of here. Elon Musk, move over. I think it would be certainly a lot less divisive than this one. I mean, cattier, maybe. You know, I think it would be like a utopian planet. There would be amazing architecture. It would all be fully impractical, like lots of winding spiral staircases that nobody wants to walk up in heels, but they'd be gorgeous. The drag world is such a beautifully diverse community of people that I really can't speak to what it would look like, right? I mean, I guess if it was different like schools of drag, there would be like a section of society that's all sort of like punk rock and everybody like sticking their tongue out of their mouth and walking around like the Exorcist on their hands and knees like Evie Oddly likes to do. And then elsewhere that would be a sort of Alaska kingdom in which everybody talks very slowly. And yeah, and you know, Jinkx and I would run Campopolis, where everybody would be required to speak in character voice at all time and make sly social commentary through stupid puns. Talking of Jinkx.
Hi there, Dayla. It's me, your favorite writing partner and collaborator, Jinkx Monsoon. I want to know, what's your favorite memory from our friendship pre-Drag Race? Before either of us were internationally tolerated. What's your favorite memory from the good old Seattle days when we were just a couple of Pacific Northwest queens hoofing the boards, trying to make it big? And I love you.
Well, leave it to Jinkx Monsoon to ask that question in the longest possible way. Oh my gosh. First of all, I guess it's tit for tat because when she was on this, I called in and basically demanded that she say that I was her favorite person. Jinkx and I have known each other for well over a decade, which is a really wild experience. She's a drag performer who, when I first met her, was so similar to me in that you could just, it's in her bones, you know? And I've known that drag is my destiny since long before I even knew what drag was. And Jinkx's passion matches my own. And so when I met her, it was instantly a kindred spirit sort of thing. Also, an insanely competitive sort of thing because we were so similar. The first time I ever saw Jinkx Monsoon perform, this is one of my favorite stories. I had seen a bunch of stuff about her on social media, and I wanted to go check her out because people had been talking about her and she seemed cool. I hadn't met her yet. And I went to see her at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for free in a Starbucks. She was performing in front of about 12 folding chairs. She came out of the bathroom that you had to enter in the code to, and she and her musical partner, Major Scales, proceeded to sit down and perform one of the greatest drag shows I've ever seen, which was the Vaudevillians, which later went on to have multiple runs in New York and London, etc. And I turned to my friend that I went with, and I said, I need to cast her in my next show, and we need to become friends, or we will be bitter rivals. And we lived happily ever after. Did Jinkx Monsoon tell me she was gonna be on All Stars? I think I was the first person she called. When Jinkx was first asked to do All Stars, she reached out to me, and she actually asked me whether I thought she should do it. And I was like, Jinkx, of course, you have been waiting to get back into the limelight for years. All you talk about is how you wish you were still on television. So of course I support that. But weirdly, she secretly thought I was gonna say no for some reason. But no, I was so delighted for her. And I did help her prepare quite a bit. I got, we talked through all of her runway looks and her costumes. We talked about her choices for Snatch Game. And I was so honored, and I still am, that she trusts me in that way. I mean, she helped me come up with doing Maggie Smith for my season as well, There's always been that sisterly support, and I'm so proud of how she's doing on that show. It makes me so happy because I work with her all the time, and I'm used to what a genius she is. But right now, the world is learning about it in a whole new way. A whole new generation of Drag Race viewers are learning how incredible she is and just seeing what I get to see on the daily. Jinkx has mentioned the idea of a best friends Drag Race, and to be on a team on Drag Race with Jinkx Monsoon would be really fun. Some people have said like, oh, I wish you'd gone through and won on All Stars 3 because then we could watch Jinkx and you compete. That's the worst idea in the world. But Jinkx and I on a team together, that would be really, really fun. After years and years of Jinkx and I sort of being slightly less in each other's immediate lives after we both were on Drag Race, we decided to join forces on a little holiday tour. We'd done all of these viewing parties for both my original season and her original season, where we had just, sat on stage together and drank far too many martinis and just sort of watched the show and babbled, and people loved it. And so initially we thought, oh, that would be fun and easy if we just took a show on the road that's the two of us. So we decided to do it. We booked a tour, and then we realized that we actually wanted to write an entire scripted show. And so that's what we did. Jinkx and I have always been close, but this has only made us closer, and it's been so wonderful to get to work with the sister, and also, all the dancers we work with on the road and in the film are people that I have been friends with and who have been part of my chosen family for many, many years. To get to bring all the Drag Race fame kind of back to the basics of why I got into it, which is about community and love and spreading joy. And I'm so incredibly grateful for it. And I'm so incredibly grateful for all the people who it's resonated with. And I just can't wait to keep doing it. What makes me irrationally angry? Well, if you leave out the word irrationally, I recently had an experience. By recently, I mean like an hour ago, so I'm still shaking. Was on Facebook because you see, the other night I was performing my hit solo show, BenDeLaCreme is Ready to Be Committed. My show was at 9:30. Guess who was on before me? Ricky Gervais. And, I really I did a lot of soul searching about whether I had anything I might want to say about that or whether I was going to let the whole thing slide. And you know what? Letting it slide didn't turn out to be an option. All I posted was a beautiful piece of fan art of something that I'd said about how if you have to make people feel bad in order to be funny, then you're not really that funny. Now, I decided completely coincidentally to post that while Ricky Gervais was on stage right before me. And wouldn't you know it, Ricky Gervais fans came out of the woodwork. And I spent almost the entire day today arguing with them about whether basic human decency was a good idea or not. It turns out That's not an easy thing to convince a lot of people of. So eventually I just took to yelling at them and calling them stupid, because sometimes you just gotta do it for yourself, you know? Treat yourself. Let's see, my bucket list in life. You know, so you hear the idea about a bucket list very often, and I'd say that in my life, I have been so fortunate to have a lot of experience as I never could have expected as a young person. And so I think what that's taught me is just to be open to all sorts of things. So my bucket list, I think in some ways has yet to be discovered, because who knows what the possibilities are if you just keep putting yourself out there and risking failure and trying new things. I think all sorts of doors can open. But if I'm to think about my wildest dreams right now, I would direct a major Hollywood feature, travel the world in a way that allowed me to see more than the inside of a hotel room, an airport, or a theater. And I don't know, own a dinosaur, be a princess in a castle, X-ray vision. Do I keep up with all the various Drag Race spin-offs? How do I put this delicately? No. However, I have watched several, and I would say that, during quarantine, I really enjoyed season 13? Is that the one that was playing? When it was like Candy Muse and Gottmik and all them? Okay, cool. So I watched that one because, we were out of things to watch, but it did reignite my love of Drag Race, because I just found Gottmik's journey on there to be so exciting, going from being sort of a look queen to being an absolute performance powerhouse. And Simone is the love of my life. I've written her multiple love letters in her DMs. She's responded once. I think it was one word, no punctuation. I'm trying to do the whites of my eyes, and every single is this black brush going to be a good idea? I'm looking at every single brush is like a different color of the rainbow. So the question is, do I use the pink one and look super stoned? That's Jinkx's brand. I can't get in on that. Or I don't know. Let's see. How are we going to do this? It's been 4 years since I've been on Drag Race, and there was an iconic moment that I hear happened toward the end, but don't spoil it for me because I haven't finished. Since then, a lot of people have asked me about whether I stand by that decision to decide that I'd gotten what I needed out of the show and to move on. And I gotta tell you, it was one of the most empowering things of my life. Since then, I have gone from doing what I thought other people wanted me to do, to starting my own production company, getting back to writing and directing my shows on a larger level, and it has served me so well. It turns out that when you trust that listening to yourself is wiser than listening to the people around you, things go in your favor. So I'd say out of all of those things that I've accomplished, my favorite thing is probably starting my own production company. It was, when you're an artist, a lot of times it's hard to get people to see the value in what you do to the extent that you see it. And sometimes the only way to get it out there is to create your own opportunities. All right, okay. We're so close. Speed round. Okay, we got it. All right, what color are my eyes? Approximately that color? Sure, whatever. Okay, this is, okay. Oh, no, okay, got black in there. That's not the color of my eyes. This is the speed round. We're making it happen. This is like a Drag Race challenge. Oh my God, and I got more black on the brush. I spent so long painting skin, and now I realized all the skin's in the wrong place. God, why did I start out by telling you all that I went to art school? I should have said I went to school for accounting. So close. That, everybody, just hang on. We're getting there. All right. Why do I keep picking out black? I don't want black. No. Happy little trees. Okay. Green. Hey, the dress has some green in it, so.
One thing to note, the green will disappear.
Oh no! That was always the intention. We're doing great. Okay, close enough. All right, so I ran out of time on the body and the background, but the beauty of technology is that if you just go in with green, you just have a floating head in the middle of your background. What do you think of that? It's not only is it a beautiful piece of artwork, it's also internet savvy. If you liked this video, subscribe to Pop Buzz by pressing this button right here.